You're listening to WorkWire, sponsored by Career Club and SHRM. Career Club has a range of services aimed at job seekers with an empathetic approach. Whether you are a job seeker yourself, know someone who is in job search, or an HR professional looking to bring a more empathetic approach to transitioning employees, check out career.club. If you are an HR professional seeking to enhance your skills, subscribe to SHRM and explore their extensive resources. Visit shrm.org. That's shrm.org.
Hello, everybody. I am Bob Goodwin, CEO of Career Club. Welcome to the latest episode of The WorkWire, where I'm joined by my good friend, the president and CEO of SHRM, Johnny C. Taylor Jr. Johnny, how are you?
I'm doing really well, Bob. Getting ready. It's been a long week, but looking forward to speaking with you today.
No, absolutely. I'm glad. I know that you've been doing a lot of speaking this week, so I'm glad that your voice is hanging in there. We will squeeze the last little bit out of it before we let you go. But thank you for joining today. So, Johnny, we've got a serious topic to discuss today that, as human beings, it's important. HR professionals, this is important. This touches everybody to some extent, and it's may not be the funnest topic, but it's definitely one of the most important topics we could possibly touch on. So as we like to do here, we like to keep reading the news and see what's going on currently. That's sort of the heartbeat of the WorkWire. So yes. I'm going to read a little bit about a headline recently from Philadelphia, and then we'll pick it up from there. So a Wells Fargo employee jumps to his death in Philadelphia. This gentleman had no kind of pre-existing thing that people would have known. He was just at work. He told his significant other, "Sorry, honey, they told me I need to stay at work tonight." And he did, and he didn't come home. So companies are on the front lines of what health officials consider to be a mental health crisis. Nearly 50,000 Americans died by suicide last year, which was a 2.6% increase. That's according to the CDC. The number of workplace suicides actually fell during the pandemic, which people working from home. But as people returned to the office, there were some high profile examples. For example, software engineer at Google's New York office in May. Famously, a lot of people heard about the airport worker on a tarmac in San Antonio in June. And then Thomas H. Lee, a private equity investor, died by a self-inflicted gunshot wound in his office in February. It's been happening everywhere. JP Morgan, Bank of America, there's unfortunately a lot of examples. Employers, especially in September, was Suicide Awareness and Prevention Month. And I know that you were doing some things on social media to help promote that. So thank you. And increasingly encouraging employees to be on the lookout for signs that somebody's not themselves. They're not acting like they usually do. But the signs that someone's considering suicide can be pretty subtle and a little bit elusive. So let me just sort of pause there. Again, like I said, I know this is a topic near and dear to your heart.
Yeah. And very personal. Many know that I was friends with the woman who was then Miss USA or had just completed her reign as Miss USA, Chesley Christ, was on top of the world. MBA from Wake Forest, law degree, working in a large law firm, had been on entertainment TV and just been nominated for an Emmy. And again, was reigning or just concluded her reign as Miss USA. Beautiful, smart, financially comfortable, secure, etc. And then she jumps from the 20 plus floor of a New York City building, her apartment building. And I had literally just spoken with her days before. The irony is that Chesley, at the top of her game, hosted for SHRM a conference on mental health.
Oh my goodness.
And none of us saw it coming. I mean, just think about that. October 4th of that year, she literally held the stage with me in New York City at an event to talk about mental health and the importance and criticality of it. And little did I know she was struggling with it. So I wanted to, it's very personal to me. I've had family members who have committed suicide and many, I'm sure, who've ideated. At the end of the day, what we know is we are in the middle of a real crisis. Americans are struggling. Globally, people are struggling. But in America in particular, we in HR know this because we are hearing it from our colleagues. Financial stress is taking people right over the edge. As gas prices rise and student loan payments begin again and all of those things that we all experience. Interest rates are going up. People are struggling under significant amounts of debt. The other issue that we know is that people are coming out of the pandemic and sort
Yep.
of this post-pandemic world. And a lot of, as much as their values, there's some advantages, I should say, of working remotely. We know that people were left alone for significant amounts of time. See, some of us who stayed at home with kids and significant others and all that good stuff, it wasn't the same as the person who went home alone. We know that there's a lot of data now that tells us that people began to suffer alcoholism, depression, loneliness. A lot of that occurred with people who were working remotely for a year and a half, and didn't have the exposure to other people. There was a time, if you remember, in the first 6 months or so of the pandemic, where even your local coffee shop was no longer open. So it wasn't as if you could not go to the workplace, but you could see human beings somewhere else. You were literally living in isolation. So the pandemic has created its own set of mental health stressors, if you will. And then finally, America's gotten mean. And let's just talk about that too. The level of meanness that we exhibit toward each other, people are road rage. People are just angry at all times. No one's saying to someone as you walk down on the street, how are you doing? You don't even ask anymore. I told the story, I think you've heard it. I was walking down the street in New York and an elderly woman fell and everyone continued walking. And I was horrified. I was like, did you not just see this? But they all had somewhere to go, and her falling was not part of their plan and it was going to delay them. I stopped and helped the lady up, but I was in shock. An old woman fell, and whether it was a young woman, old woman, kid, it's just shocking that no one looked bothered by it but me. And so that combination of a country that appears to be mean, more mean, there's a great article in, I think, The Atlantic that talks about why
Yeah.
America has become so mean. I think it's real. And the pandemic, post-pandemic transition, and then what we know to be financial stressors has created an environment where a lot of our employees are under mental stress, and we are not. You almost can't look for it, because I just told you 3 days or so before my friend committed suicide, I spoke with her. We had a delightful conversation. There was zero indication. Months before that, I hosted an event with her. So I don't know, and I'm actually pretty trained to do this stuff. I've intentionally gotten some certifications on this, and you may or may not see it.
So I just want to touch on something that you said about the pandemic. A couple aspects of that kind of hit me. One is over 1 million Americans died from COVID. That means somebody somebody that was close to you, very good chance that affected you. Somebody that, and oftentimes a younger person died. So there's that grief, and sorry, you don't just get over it because you don't have to wear a mask now or whatever.
That's
The
And
thing
they
on
died.
isolation,
I point out just before you
well,
go. And many,
that's where I was getting ready to go, Johnny. My mother was in an assisted living facility by
yes,
herself, 89, 90 years old. And we got to do door visits, meaning
right.
we were outside, she was inside, you can't touch her. Sorry, we're social beings. Like, touch matters. We couldn't
Mm-hmm.
touch her. And she was sad. We were sad. There's a lot of stories about people who lost their parents or grandparents and couldn't go to a funeral because of
That's right.
social distancing or whatever. And it's like people are carrying that around. You want to talk about long COVID? That's long COVID. It's
That's long
emotional,
COVID. Well said. Well
right?
said.
Like, it's in your heart, not in your lungs so much. And so, this is a lot of what people are carrying around and don't necessarily share. And now we're going back, to the office, at some level. And yeah, there's a lot going on inside people's minds that maybe is being shared. And I appreciate what you brought up between financial, COVID, sort of just the general tenor and tone of dialogue today. It's all kind of pressing in on people. And we talked on a previous episode, particularly Gen Z, is
Yes.
feeling so much stress. At my age, I would look at them and go, "Oh my gosh, you've got everything to live for. Life is in front of you, like all the good pieces." And they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm not sure if I want to make it."
Right.
And, just completely stressed out. And they're bringing
Yeah.
that to work.
And we've made progress, but we have not sufficiently destigmatized mental health either. And so when someone is aware themselves of the crises that they are facing mentally, uh, they don't feel like it's okay to admit that I'm having a problem. If I had a physical ailment, my back hurts, my eye hurts, my whatever, skin rash, I don't have a problem talking with my colleagues oftentimes about it. I mean, there are some health conditions that are sort of personal, but generally speaking, people talk about them. When someone is truly in a mental health crisis moment, few people believe that they can talk about it to anyone, particularly one of their colleagues. And that's another problem that we have is we've got to get to the point where people talk about their mental health as much as they do
I
their
want
physical.
thank you for bringing that up. We'll jump around here a little bit, but you bring up a really good point, so I don't want to miss it while we're doing it. There was a big survey done, and I can cite it in the show notes later. But here's some of the things that employees fear about sharing what's going on. Really, if I disclose my mental health situation at work, I'll receive no support and may be fired or ostracized. If I disclose a mental health condition, my privacy will be violated and people will treat me differently. If I miss time from work because I need to get mental health treatment, I may lose out on promotional advancement or continuing education opportunities, damaged goods. If I disclose suicidal thoughts, someone may call first responders and I'll be escorted out of my workplace in handcuffs and
Yep.
involuntarily held in a psych ward. Sorry, Johnny, I'm going to keep my stuff to myself,
Yeah.
is what people
I
are
mean,
saying.
that's why it's a big C, capital C culture problem, not just within your organization, little c. We are a society that doesn't understand mental health. We don't have a good relationship with it. And so those things that we don't understand, we're often fearful of. And
Yep.
so your colleague, as well intended as they are, if you say, frankly, on a very basic level, I am thinking about killing myself, what the person sitting next to you thinks is, well, gosh, if you're prepared to kill yourself, what might you do to me? And so immediately your
Oof.
mind goes into, I don't know that I want to be around this person. Now, you tell me you've been diagnosed with cancer. I don't think somehow that means that poses a risk to me. But if you say you're
Right.
thinking about committing your own suicide, then that does present a risk to me and those of us around us. So we respond to it quite differently. And I don't think, oftentimes I talk about a parity between physical health and mental health. They're different, interrelated, but the way we react to them, the way we experience mental health is different, and it requires a different intervention on behalf of employers. One of the things that we've talked about a lot with employers, because we oftentimes on the work wire, we say we can talk about all of the headlines we want, but let's talk some solutions practically. What can
Yep.
employers do about it? Because you can work on changing the narrative and the conversation and destigmatizing it, but that's a long tail strategy that doesn't turn overnight, if ever. What we can do is ensure as employers that we have tools available for people who can either focus on mental wellness or mental illness. Most organizations have had some form of EAP. That has really been used for mental illness. Once you know that you are going into a dark place, call these people. And by the way, you get 3 or 4 calls, and after that, you got to pay for it, right? Because you better get well. So the EAP programs that we've had have been reactive and quite limited in the quality of the offerings, the service offerings. Mental wellness is more proactive. And that is when we
Yep.
start suggesting to employees that just as you go to the dentist twice a year or go to get an annual physical checkup, go get an annual or biannual or quarterly mental checkup. Just take care of yourself so that you live in mental health wellness and not wait until you have a mental health illness. That's one of the things that we've got to build as employers into our design, our health and welfare plans. We've got to ensure that we offer programs that are as robust and as accessible for your mental wellness as we do for your physical wellness. Just doing that acknowledges that the employee may not ever feel comfortable talking with their colleagues about their mental illness challenges. But if you give them an opportunity, avail them of options where they can get assistance, you can significantly take that number down from 50,000 people a year to something significantly less.
What I'm looking forward to talking about more in the future on this, I'm picking up on your point about being proactive, and let's don't wait till it becomes a crisis, but let's get in front of this. And actually, I like how you said, the real mental wellness piece of this is what we've talked about at least once before, which is resilience and the ability to absorb disappointment, change, things that make us initially afraid, because that's called life. Like, it's not going to stop. And the pace of that is only increasing. And so, either you can be like, well, oh my gosh, all the dominoes are just going to fall and fall faster now. Or how do we re-engineer how people deal with these things? Re-engineer is probably not a fair way of saying that, but give people the skills to not just sort of cope and muddle through things, but to actually flip the script and turn some things into potentially a positive. We've talked about benefit finding as an example before. Like, okay, not maybe what I would have chosen, like the situation, but having said that, how can we deal with it? You were talking about your friend, and you said, you're very close and you didn't even realize anything. Contrary to popular expectation, more than half of people who died by suicide did not have a known mental health condition. So it wasn't like, and then beyond depression, anxiety, substance abuse disorders, environmental contributors that drive suicidal despair, these factors include workplace bullying, interesting, discrimination, right? Relationships, physical health issues. You touched on a couple of these: financial, legal, housing stress. There's a lot of things acting on people. For employers, this means a broad approach to the mobilization of resources that are appropriate, more than just a referral to the EAP. So I really appreciate what you're saying, Johnny, and kind of putting a stake in the ground. I'm sure for you, multiple times doing this, of getting in front of this. I think that if you're chasing the tail of the tiger, you're never going to catch it.
That's right. But now I will say this, because people will more likely than not suffer in silence when it comes to mental health, wellness and mental illness, it's hard to put this all on the employer. Like I said, this is a big C problem. The big culture is that is seen as a weakness to struggle mentally. And, we've been taught to be resilient. And we're like, okay, but what happens when I can't be? Am I going to be judged for not being resilient, right? Which layers on to my already, sort of the low place that I'm sitting already. So we've got to figure out, you and I talk a lot about empathy.
Yeah.
We have to teach. I think our best opportunity within our organizations is to teach each other to be more empathetic. And that's not just leader down, it's including the people who sit next to you and to the right of you. There's a little study that I watched one time on television, it was a little YouTube pickup or something, where a guy would walk down the hallway and say, "How are you?" And the person would say, "I'm having a really bad day." And they'd say, "Okay, great," and keep walking. Because people don't really listen at all. It's pleasantry, it's cordial. I'm supposed to ask, "How are you doing?" But I don't really care. Right? And what do you do? So we've got to teach people in the process of being more empathetic to listen to what people say, listen to what they don't say. Try to put yourself in the shoes of a single mom whose husband just left her for a younger woman who left her with 3 children. She's working a minimum wage job, and this entire thing is coming down on her at once. Put yourself in a situation.
Too, by the way.
On the way in, that's right. And her boss is upset that she's 2 minutes late, so she just got docked or penalized, right?
Yeah.
These are the things. Or, an executive who is the breadwinner of his family, a family of 3 or 4, wife, he's doing all of the right things, and he hits, 55 years old, and the company fires him and finds 2 people for the price of 1. And they eliminate his job. And he's less of a man. He can't put that kid through college next semester. He can't. The
Mm-hmm.
wife who used to be the homemaker has now got to go out and get their own job. Like, we are having people are walking around and they're embarrassed by it. They're embarrassed. So it's not the lack of finances in and of itself. It's the shame, the lack of self-esteem. I mean, what it's done to who you are is critical. You and I talked on a most recent episode about companies that are doing well but still laying off.
Yeah.
So the company's doing well, and then they do a mass layoff, and you're laid off. What do you say to your friends? Yesterday, you were bragging about how great the company was doing. The newspaper is saying the CEO is doing well, the company's doing well, but you lost your job. And how does that personally affect you from a self-esteem standpoint? Like,
Let
these
me
are
let me
the
tell you
issues.
something. Let me tell you something, Johnny. So, a big part of Career Club is in outplacement. We call it next placement.
Yes,
We want to focus on it.
yes,
But,
I like that.
but on the empathy piece, like our whole approach is being people centric and empathetic because the emotions that people are coming to us in, there's really kind of 4 dominant emotions. There's
Tell
fear.
me.
I'm too old.
Fear.
I'm too young. It's not going to work out for me for whatever reason. I'm confused. I've never had to do this before. I don't even know what to do. But I'm going to get to two that are really, really bad. One is shame, which is what you talked about. And it's like I had this really great job. I was a CXO at some company or whatever, or not the CXO, just a rank and file person, and I'm worthless. Like I am so ashamed. I don't even want to go home and tell my family what just happened because I'm a loser. And then
Yep.
the last one is anger. And it's like,
Yes.
Johnny, this was so unfair. If you knew how badly they treated me, and anger left unattended to festers into bitterness.
That's right.
And that's really dangerous too. So this kind of bad cocktail of emotions that people are carrying around, like it's not good and needs to be addressed. It's not just so much like, all right, let's go work on your resume. Like,
Right.
no, 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 no,
No,
not at
no, no,
all.
no, no. And I got to tell you, think about then, because we stop at how that person whose job has been impacted, we stop at them. But what about the kids? What about the spouse? What about family members and how they are negatively, mentally, and emotionally impacted? I looked up to my father. He's now doesn't have a job. What does that do? I'm not going to be able to go back to college next semester because we no longer have the money. Like and they're also watching their family member struggle. I'm watching dad, the big, proud provider, all of a sudden not be able to do that. And so it's the downstream effect as well. The house that we used to have, we're having to sell now. These are things that they impact broader society, and people are walking around with that. And it's easy to think, the reason I pointed out the executive is we have a lot of sympathy and empathy to lower paid employees. But higher paid people have higher paid problems, right? And so if you were fired and you're one of 165 million workers in America, that's fine. When you're the CEO, and you're fired, the world knows. People issue
Johnny,
press.
I took a call not too many weeks ago from a CXO of a not small retailer who just got fired. And
Yep,
this, like you say, kind of big dude in tears,
that's
in
right.
tears, mostly because one, what the heck just happened? But two is, I don't want to go home and explain to my kids
That's right.
what happened. I am
That's right.
petrified of going home that I have failed them so miserably. And I just like massively fell off the pedestal and back to shame. Just
Yep.
totally, totally ashamed. So
Shame,
you're right.
fear.
Just because you think they've got the big title or the big income, Well, they probably have expenses that match all that, and freaking out on like, how are we paying for
When
Wake Forest next year,
That's right, hands down.
right?
No, that's so. Yeah, those are the things that we're and why I love talking with you about this in the work wire is I know it sounds a little hokey when I talk about empathy, but just practicing, um, strengthening our empathy muscle will help some significant percentage of those 50,000 people who've contemplated suicide or just self-harm. Because you talked about suicide, that's the ultimate loss of life, but people, they're cutters, they're people who are drinking their way through their mental
Yes,
health crisis
yes.
or using drugs. People are coping in the ways that they can. So the numbers are significant and the toll on our economy is significant. So this is not just a feel good or the right thing to do. It's not a morality argument, although it is a morals question. It's a business imperative. It's something we've got to talk about as a society because there are real costs associated, lost productivity, lost performance, innovation, etc., when your employees are not operating at full capacity because they're struggling mentally.
Okay, I want to talk businessy stuff for half of a second, but I do want to say to listeners, because you're right, it is a societal thing. Everybody knows somebody who's looking for a job right now.
That's
It's almost impossible that you don't know somebody who's looking for a job right now. And what I would really encourage people to do is just ask them how they're doing and
right.
listen, and like really listen, and let them give the first part of, let them say something, and just be quiet,
Right.
because more will come. More will
That's right.
come. That's real. That's like extreme listening, which I think a friend of mine likes to talk about. And
That's right.
that's a way of, tell me more. What else? Wow, that sounds really tough. And let them
Bob,
just
I got
keep.
just before you pivot, because that is such a critical point. I have a friend of mine, and to protect his identity, uh, very successful doctor, da 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 da, who lost his job, and it crushed him because of the way that he lost his job. It wasn't
Yes.
theft or anything like that, but I mean, just period, right? I reached out to him one day, and I could hear in his voice fear, and this was a manly big
Yes.
man. I said, "Tell you what, come down to DC." Um, and he came down and we spent some time that weekend. I said, "Tell you what, I'll go back with you. Let's pack up your house and you move into our basement." Because I was here, my daughter was here, my son, like we can help fill, because he was alone, no longer married. His son is an adult, da 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 da. And I said, I need to help you. So it's more than just, I'm going to go out there on a limb and say, you should say, how are you? But sometimes take that extra step and actually impose on that person because it's
Mm.
embarrassing. And if you almost have to take it and say, they're embarrassed to say, I'm not sure I can make next month's rent. Can I stay with you? So maybe you offer it, or maybe you offer to
Yes.
pay next month's rent, or maybe you offer to help them find a job. My point is, I'm not saying you should do what you can't afford to do. You got to take care of
Hmm.
yourself, but there are things we can do that can ward off these situations. And don't expect people who are in need to come to you and ask for help. You almost have to take the extra step and
Yeah,
say,
that's such a great point, Johnny, because you do talk about, all kidding aside, extreme listening. That's extreme empathy. That is
yes,
proactive empathy. Hey, Johnny, I've been thinking about you. How's everything going? It Would it be helpful to you if you could come just stay with us for a little bit, or
right,
whatever help looks like in their particular situation? But this is the kind of issue that everybody, literally everybody, can do something.
that's right.
Everybody can be part
Not
of the
just the employer.
solution.
That's right. The employer can do what the employer can do. And there are limits to that. There are HIPAA reasons that we can't talk. And there are a lot of limitations, legal limitations on what an employer can do, because mental illness is an illness, right? So when you're in crisis, we've got to manage this very carefully. You're right. There are privacy concerns. Uh, and so all of these things factor in. But what we can do as fellow Americans, fellow human beings,
Mhm.
is to watch out for each other. There's nothing that this idea of community, there's nothing that can more quickly solve many of these issues than just, taking care of thy neighbor. and that's something that we're not doing enough as well. And that neighbor might work with you, that neighbor might live next to you, but neighbor in the broadest sense.
So if I would, thank you for bringing up the point a minute ago that, we do want to be about solutions. And so like, what
Yes.
can we do about this? If, and please build on this, but if you're at work and you see a colleague, whether you're a manager or not a manager, that person, if you see a colleague and she doesn't seem like her normal self, he doesn't seem like his normal self, just ask and say,
Right.
hey, you don't seem like the happy-go-lucky person I'm used to seeing. Is everything okay? and,
Yep.
and, and as you say, kind of lean in to it a little
Yes.
bit. Ask, just ask, be available, build trust with people so that they feel safe talking to you. What else would you add to kind of build on that of what people can do?
I want to build on that and say, and even because of what you said in the beginning, a lot of times this is, we talk about hypertension and strokes being the silent killer. This is
Yeah.
also a silent killer. So
Mm.
there are times when someone will evidence the fact that they're in mental heading toward a crisis, and there are times when they won't. So what I oftentimes do is I ask people who appear to be doing well, I ask, how are you doing? And listen, like actually listen. People will give you signs if you, but sometimes we see people and we think they're on top of the world and you don't even think to ask. Had you asked, maybe they would have told you. So I would go a step further. If you see someone who clearly is evidencing some challenges, be there. But I make a point of saying, how are you? How's your husband? How are things going? And people will tell you if they feel comfortable. And in the first time they may not answer it, the second, third, but you'll begin to see everyone is struggling with something at some time. Everyone. And oftentimes you're struggling with some of the same things. You just think you're the only person in the world
Okay,
who's
so
going through
so
it.
so so here's the unlock on that is move first.
That's right.
And so when somebody asks you how you're doing,
That's right.
I appreciate you
Be honest.
asking, John. Yeah, I really appreciate you asking. Can we go get a cup of coffee real quick? Because my
Right.
older son is really acting out right now. And
Amen.
I know that you've had teenagers before. I don't know what to do. Like,
That's right.
right? So
Nope.
it's,
Spot on.
we've talked about this. This is the vulnerability paradox is when you
That's right.
show and model some vulnerability, you're giving other
Yeah.
people the permission to share with you at a deeper level. And I'll make a little joke here, but it's true too. It's good humor tends to be when people, hey Johnny, how you doing? I'm fine. You know what fine
Right.
stands for? Fouled
Tell
up,
me.
insecure, neurotic, and emotional. We're all fine.
Help. Can I tell you, as we wrap this up, I had the most moving experience this week. We have an all staff convening. We call it Start Coffee. And we had an employee stand up in the front of us and share with the entire employee population. Some people know, I had no idea, that he was on the show My 600-Pound Life. I didn't
Wow.
know that we had an employee amongst us who he ultimately tipped over 700 pounds, a Sherm
Wow.
employee. And he stood in the front of us and he said, people were judging me because of my weight, and they never realized what caused me to eat the way that I was eating. And all of it was really born out of a mental illness or mental crisis. It manifested itself physically in my weight gain, but I was hurting. And he went on to share and there was not a dry eye in the building. You could have heard a pin drop. And all of us, many of us, just saw an overweight person. And you made all sorts of assumptions of why. They're lazy, they eat too much, they have no discipline. You made all of those assumptions, not knowing, and I can say this because he shared it with us personally, what was going on at home with his father. His mother was drug addicted. His father was this, that. And he said, oh my gosh, this guy was suffering through all of this and he ate to placate the pain. And so the mental illness led to this, and the result is so it was just fascinating. And so, again, to your point, even those people, you may see someone who's overweight, and so they may seem jolly and happy, but could it be that the overweight is a sign that he or she is really, under some serious mental health stress? Those are the moments. You got to reach out to everyone, talk to your brother, your sister, have conversations. And then your point is at the top of the list. Apex is you as a leader have to show people that you're vulnerable. I went through that a lot. When I went through my divorce, I told people divorce is ugly. It hurts. Even if you ask for divorce or someone else asks for divorce, it's a failure. If you love the person, even if you didn't love, it's a failure, and it's a public failure. So you're going through a lot. When you tell people that, it's amazing how they will then be willing to share with you when they're going through things.
Right. And well, so that's the definition of empathy, is feeling another person's pain. And what we all share is our humanity. And everybody deals with, disappointment, fears, struggles, relationship problems, whatever it is, we all share in that. So we all have the capacity to be empathetic, but it needs to be intentional, right? And it needs to be authentic.
That's right.
So
when we do that, we're going to get those numbers down. 50,000 is a quite manageable number.
This is what I love about, what you were sharing, like at SHRM 23, is, HR in particular, but all of us, HR, not HR, have the ability to have a positive impact on the human in human resources, the people that make up the workforce, your colleagues, your team, your neighbors, whoever it is. So, Johnny, it's a very sobering topic, but one that I ultimately walk away from encouraged on, because it's something that we can do something about.
Each one of us. The employer can do some things, but all of us can do something about this. And if we commit to doing it, we can take that 50,000 down to a very, very few, if zero.
Awesome. Johnny, thank you so much for sharing your time, your expertise. And to our viewers and listeners, thank you so much for taking a few moments with us today, too. Hope you continue to subscribe to The Workwire on YouTube, and make sure you're downloading us on your favorite podcast platform. But in the meantime, just thank you very much. Take care of yourself. Look out for your neighbor. Be available. And we can all make a difference on this. So, Johnny, thank you.
And have a great night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Check out career.club for personalized help with your job search. Visit shrm.org to become part of the largest human resources organization worldwide.